In the mid-1980s, the world's eyes were locked on the devastating famine in Ethiopia. The images were harrowing, and they inspired a wave of compassion that rippled across the globe. The music industry in particular stepped up like never before. In the UK, you had Band Aid, assembled by Bob Geldof and Midge Ure, who gave us the iconic Do They Know It's Christmas? America answered with its own star-studded mega group, USA for Africa, organized by Quincy Jones and featuring legends like Michael Jackson and Lionel Richie, who delivered the global anthem, We Are the World. These weren't just songs, they were cultural moments that defined the decade. They dominated the radio, shot to the top of the charts, and raised tens of millions of dollars for famine relief. They defined an era of musical activism, uniting pop, soul, and rock under one massive benevolent banner. But while these heartfelt mainstream efforts were capturing the world's attention, something else was brewing in the shadows. Something louder, heavier, and a whole lot more rebellious. You think you know the story of music's response to the African famine? What if I told you there was another supergroup, a louder, largely forgotten one, born not in the polished world of pop, but in the fire and leather of hard rock and heavy metal? In 1985, the world fought famine with We Are the World and Do They Know It's Christmas? But while pop music was busy saving the world, the loudest corner of the rock scene was mounting its own rebellion against hunger. This is the story of the supergroup you've maybe never heard of, the one with more leather, more volume, and way more guitar solos than all the others combined. This is the story of Hearing Aid. The Ethiopian famine, which started in 1983, unfolded during a brutal civil war that lasted for much of the decade. Amid severe drought and widespread crop failures, the government diverted much of its budget to fund military efforts against rebel forces instead of addressing the food crisis. These conditions led to one of the worst humanitarian disasters of the era, forcing millions from their homes. By the time it was over, as many as 1 million people had died and hundreds of thousands of children had lost their parents. For those who were kids back then, it was an unforgettable and deeply tragic event. Our story starts not on the stage, but in a radio station. In February of 1985, two members of the band Dio, bassist Jimmy Bain and guitarist Vivian Campbell, were at a 48-hour charity radiothon at KLOS in Los Angeles. As the pair were being interviewed, a radio DJ asked them why no one in the metal or hard rock community was invited to participate in the charity songs. The mainstream charity efforts, for all the good intentions, had snubbed an entire subculture. Bain and Campbell felt that their community, often painted by the media as angry and self-obsessed, deserved a chance to show that they had a heart. Just to give you an idea of how much disdain there was for the hard rock and metal community, this was during the whole PMRC hearings happening. The organizers of the charity songs had purposely avoided hard rock and metal artists, with Sony's software marketing director telling the Enterprise Journal in 1986, "There's so much negative feeling in the marketplace towards heavy metal artists, they're supposed to be weird satanic types." I also want to point out that there were also some other spin-offs that were notable who recorded charity songs that featured stars from gospel music. There was a group of Canadian artists called Northern Lights who recorded the charity single Tears Are Not Enough, and there's even a group of Hispanic artists who released a charity single as well. So getting back to the story, Bain and Campbell half-jokingly threw around the idea of starting their own project. Publicist Sharon Weiss recalled, "Jimmy wanted to call it Hearing Aid. Wendy Dio thought we were calling it Hearing Aid, which sounded more serious, but we settled on Hearing Aid like rock and roll." The joke quickly got serious. They had a powerful instrumental track already ready to go, but they knew they couldn't unite notoriously independent tribes of heavy metal and hard rock on their own. They needed a figurehead, a leader respected by everyone, from glam bands on the Sunset Strip to the titans of British metal. They needed a king. They needed Ronnie James Dio. At first, Dio was actually reluctant. His self-named outfit was deep in the recording of Sacred Heart, and he saw it as a massive distraction. But after some convincing, especially from his wife and manager Wendy, he was in. He also felt the sting of being excluded and saw a chance to prove the critics wrong. His wife Wendy recalled, Ronnie had wanted to be part of that, referring to the original charity songs, but we were nasty, dirty, heavy metal people. With Ronnie James Dio leading the charge, Hearing Aid went from a wild idea to a full-blown mission. He wasn't lending his name. He was taking over, ready to marshal the forces of heavy metal for a cause bigger than any single band. With Dio on board, the project kicked into overdrive. His wife Wendy told Yahoo, Ronnie was very intent. He had a lot in his head. He was the producer, the arranger, the writer, everything. So he was kind of really steeped in his business mode. Ronnie being Ronnie, he was a control freak and he just took off with it. He took the instrumental track from Bain and Campbell and poured his signature lyrical genius into it, creating an epic anthem called Stars. The song's message has often been misunderstood. The central lyric, "We are the stars," wasn't about rock star egos. It was about all of us. Ronnie's point was that every single person, from a rock god in Hollywood to a starving child in Africa, is a star in the universe, and that shared light is what compels us to help each other. The next challenge was huge, assembling the band. This wasn't just a few buddies in a room. This was about uniting a whole genre or subgenres. The recording sessions were booked for May 20th and May 21st, 1985 at the legendary A&M Studios in Hollywood, the very same place We Are the World was recorded just months earlier. The project also got some help from someone who was associated with the We Are the World project, Marty Rigol, who was the head of USA for Africa. Marty explained to the organizers of Hearing Aid that they had a lot of challenges on making We Are the World. He showed them early footage of We Are the World and offered some valuable support by connecting them with some vendors and donors who would help USA for Africa. This assistance provided them with about $500,000 in donated goods and services. The call soon went out, and the response was insane. 40 of the biggest names in 80s hard rock and heavy metal showed up. The roster was a dream team of rock royalty, members of Judas Priest, Iron Maiden, Mötley Crüe, Quiet Riot, Twisted Sister, Dokken, W.A.S.P, Blue Öyster Cult, and Journey, just to name a few. Even the legendary parody band Spinal Tap came fully in character to lend their support and provide some much-needed laughs. The lead vocals were a murderer's row of singers: Ronnie James Dio, Rob Halford of Judas Priest, Kevin DeBro of Quiet Riot, Eric Bloom of Blue Öyster Cult, Dave Meniketti of Y&T, Paul Shortino of Rough Cut, and Don Dokken. Each one was a powerhouse in their own. Together, they were about to create a sound nobody had ever heard before. The scene at A&M Studios was something else. Imagine a room packed with musicians whose entire public image was built on chaos, rivalry, as well as rebellion. The media loved to call them egotistical maniacs, but inside that studio, the vibe was pure camaraderie. Don Dokken remembered showing up in a white suit just to stand out in the sea of black leather, and Ronnie James Dio joked to him, GQ magazine called. Blackie Lawless of W.A.S.P admitted that a lot of the younger guys were intimidated, suddenly sharing a room with legends they grew up idolizing. But that tension quickly melted away. This wasn't a competition, it was a collaboration. Dio told the LA Times, "For me, the most important thing is to turn one person's head around, only one. If only one life, one mind or attitude has changed, then I've done what I set out to do." As for the song, Dio told the LA Times, "It'll be lightish heavy metal so that it would appeal to a larger audience." But the most uniquely metal part of the whole thing, the guitar solo. While We Are the World had one solo, Stars unleashed an army of guitar heroes. The final track featured a nearly 4-minute-long guitar solo, a shred between 11 of the genre's most celebrated players. Yngwie Malmsteen, Neil Schon of Journey, George Lynch of Dokken, Brad Gillis of Night Ranger, and Vivian Campbell himself were just a few of the virtuosos who traded blistering licks. Iron Maiden's Dave Murray and Adrian Smith even flew in from their massive World Slavery tour to add their signature harmonies. It was a jaw-dropping display of guitar firepower that has never been matched. Dio admitted to the LA Times that almost all the artists he asked to partake did show up, but he did admit there were some no-shows. Reportedly, the no-shows included Brian May, Nikki Sixx, and Jimmy Page. Photographer Mark Weiss, who was there to capture the sessions, told Yahoo, Spinal Tap were like the real stars there. You know, everyone was swapping stories because everything that happened in that movie has probably happened to at least half of these bands in real life. The project, though, wasn't without its problems. The biggest challenge hit after the music was recorded. Getting legal clearances from dozens of different record labels and managers was a logistical nightmare. These contract disputes, which were handled by Dio's wife and manager, delayed the release for months, pushing it all the way to January of 1986. It was Polygram Records who wanted to issue the charity single, but they also felt that the project would sell more copies if it was issued with a handful of other songs and released as a proper compilation album. So the Hearing Aid album ended up featuring a number of donated tracks from giants like Kiss, Rush, and Motorhead. It also included a half an hour or so documentary showing the making of the record, packed with behind-the-scenes footage that captured the incredible spirit of the event. Ronnie James Dio and the team were adamant that Hearing Aid was more than just an album. They built a transparent and accountable charity. Wary of stories about aid rotting on docks due to corruption and red tape, Ronnie, Jimmy, and Vivian set up Hearing Aid as a formal nonprofit with a 14-person board of directors to make sure every dollar was handled with integrity. Marty Rogel, who is the executive director of USA for Africa, managed and distributed all the income generated from Stars, and he was interviewed by the LA Times. When comparing the money-making ability of Stars to We Are the World, he said he felt that heavy metal could do as well as his pop predecessor. He said, "I don't see why there isn't that potential." But that wasn't the case. By early '86, the Ethiopian famine was declared over, and it wasn't getting as much news coverage as it was the prior year. The long delays in getting labels and managers' permission killed the project's momentum. The album only charted at number 76 in Australia and nowhere else. The single, meanwhile, Stars, peaked at number 26 on the UK singles chart in April of '86. The music video for Stars did receive some moderate airplay on MTV's Heavy Metal Mania, and afterwards on MTV's replacement program, Headbangers Ball. When it was finally released, Hearing Aid, depending on what you read, raised somewhere between $1 million to $3 million. While that was a fraction of the tens of millions raised by Band-Aid and USA for Africa, it was still an impressive sum for a project born from a niche genre with almost no mainstream help. It was proof that the heart of the rock community was just as big as its sound. The organizers of Hearing Aid didn't just want to raise money, they wanted to make a tangible difference. To avoid the pitfalls of other charities, they used the funds to buy and ship agricultural machinery directly to communities in Africa, not just limited to Ethiopia, giving people the tools they needed for long-term sustainable farming. The project's impact was also felt closer to home, as Don Dawkin recalled some funds helping to establish a building in California's San Fernando Valley where homeless kids could get a meal. But despite its noble goals and success, Hearing Aid never reached the iconic status of its pop culture cousins. It's largely faded from mainstream memory, a forgotten chapter in rock history. But why? The main culprit was the heavy metal stigma of the 80s. Mainstream radio, and more importantly MTV, wasn't eager to give heavy airplay to a 7-minute-long metal epic, no matter how good the cause was. Also, the delays killed any possible momentum as its release coincided with the Ethiopian famine being declared over. Those involved also placed the blame at the feet of Polygram Records, who seemed to not properly market the record. There was also no massive televised concert to burn Hearing Aid into public consciousness. However, there was a moment when some of these all-stars did come together again to perform Stars as an encore at Dio's concert at Southern California's Irvine Meadows Amphitheater on July 26, 1986. The Boston Globe ran a story that gave some more insight into the atmosphere at rock radio at the time. The Globe stated that local stations like WBCN only gave Stars airplay during their weekly metal show. The station's music director Don McCluskey told the paper, "It's not that we're against its philosophy, we just haven't found room for it yet." Elsewhere, other stations, according to the Globe, found the song, and I quote, "too metal." Sharon Weiss, the publicist for Hearing Aid, told the Globe, "There has been decent support from radio, but a lot of stations have softened their formats in the last year and do not play metal." Photographer Mark Weiss told Yahoo, "It probably comes down to radio. Let's face it, a lot of the metal bands that got on the radio, it was either a ballad or some pop and commercial. Stars was just really a heavy metal song. Maybe it just wasn't meant to be a commercial song, but I'm surprised it didn't do well, to be honest with you. Today, it would have done good because of social media. Everyone would be blasting it out. But back then, we just relied on a company to do it, and that company wasn't behind it." For those who were there, though, and for the legions of metal fans who bought the record, Hearing Aid was anything but forgettable. It was a proud moment that shattered stereotypes, proving that the metal community was capable of incredible generosity as well as unity. It showed the world that behind all the leather and studs were artists who cared deeply about the world around them. Hearing Aid remains a powerful, if overlooked, chapter in the story of music and charity. It was born from a feeling of exclusion, but blossomed into an incredible show of solidarity. For 2 days in an LA studio, the biggest names in hard rock and heavy metal, led by the unwavering conviction of Ronnie James Dio, put their egos and rivalries aside for a common cause. They created Stars, an anthem that stands as a cult classic and a testament that one-of-a-kind moment when the loudest genre on the earth showed its compassionate side. The project's legacy is twofold. It raised millions that provided real, sustainable aid to people in need, and it left a permanent mark on the metal community, forever disproving the tired stereotypes that had dogged the genre for years. It proved that heavy metal was more than just noise and rebellion. It was a global family with the power to make a difference. The story of Hearing Aid is a reminder that the most important histories aren't always the most visible. Sometimes the most passionate stories are waiting in the margins, ready to be rediscovered. It was a moment when the outcasts became the heroes, and the result was one of rock's greatest forgotten supergroups. What are your guys' memory of Hearing Aid? And if you guys enjoyed today's video, make sure to like and subscribe for more stories you thought you knew. Thanks for watching. We'll see you again in Rock and Culture Stories. Take care.